Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 182, which is called Ow. So this is, we're in the middle of a manga arc, so the name of this episode is the name of the chapter that it's adapting. And once again, very accurate, faithful adaptation with just a few changes to make it more relevant to the anime, given that the anime has all of this extra material to sort of back up what overall is going on. So from my watching and reading of the manga chapter again, we got one completely new scene. That was the Jigen and Amado scene, talking about Victor and the fact that Jigen believes there is a traitor separate than Victor within the group. That makes sense. Back in the manga, I don't think we had enough context for like who Victor was and what he was doing to have a scene like that, but in the anime we do. So that was actually quite good, and it's them, I suppose, utilizing the fact that the manga is sort of well ahead of where the anime is right now, and they can better do a scene like that because they know where things are going to go. Other than that, everything else was just sort of like minor changes to scenes where they removed a little bit of dialogue here, they inserted a little bit of extra dialogue. Probably the biggest change was to the Boruto and Mitsuki scene, the scene where Mitsuki convinces Boruto to actually go on the mission. They took out an interesting scene where one of the reasons Mitsuki gives for why Boruto should come, and why he's being, I suppose, a little bit of a hypocrite here, is that, oh, but didn't you say that you were going to be sort of the right-hand man to Sarada when she becomes Hokage? How are you going to do that if you don't come along with this mission? So a little bit of a teasing thing there, a little bit of the sort of shipping, but more important dynamic of Boruto and Sarada that they didn't cover here. But they sort of ended up replacing that in the same scene with, the thing that's consistent across both versions is the if you're not going, I'm not going basic policy from Mitsuki. But in the anime, he then says, but I have free will now, and I'm going to go. And Boruto's like, oh, like, wow, that's like, it's his first time, I suppose, seeing Mitsuki make a big move that sort of like goes against what Boruto sort of feels since the arc with Mitsuki and the other fabricated beings, the like Onoki arc that we had, and that was really cool to see that reference to that, because you couldn't have included the scene in the you couldn't have done this scene in the anime exactly as it's done in the manga, because it would have stood out like a sore thumb that Mitsuki is a character, that major growth for him where he can have his own free will. He doesn't just follow Boruto around blindly. He just decides to follow Boruto at everything he does here. So he still wants Boruto to come on the mission with them, but if Boruto doesn't come, he's still going to go with Sarada because he wants to. He's part of the team. Boruto's not everything, but Boruto is still important to Mitsuki. So that was good. I really like that, and just everything he says about convincing Boruto that we're not just delivering a scientific ninja tool, we're delivering the seventh Hokage's hand that protects the village. That's important. We need to do this, which I suppose brings us into one of the more interesting aspects of like what this episode accomplished overall, which was that one, it really doubled down that this arc doesn't just happen to have some ninja tool stuff going on. No, it's important that they're bringing that up again. This arc is very focused on ninja tools. We now know that our main villain for this arc is going to be Ao, who has ninja tools as prosthetics, which is a pretty major point that they're bringing up. And then what was a character we just dealt with who also was sort of researching sort of prosthetics and using sort of ninja tools as that? Victor. And through the last arc, we saw that basically the Kara, an aspect of their powers, is that they are sort of modified by Amado. So now you can connect a few dots of like, okay, Amado's very talented, but he maybe doesn't have all of the resources. So they got some of the information about scientific ninja tools from Katasuke, because this episode reveals Ao was the one who put Katasuke under Genjutsu to sort of investigate and get information about ninja tools. He was the one responsible for Katasuke's weird behavior during the Momoshiki arc. That was really cool to see. And then the sort of twist moment at the end of the episode where after the train sequence and Ao is left on the train on his own, it's revealed that Kashin Koji is there on the other side of the seat talking to him, that he has set Ao up to be, you are the one who has to do this mission. Because again, in the last episode, he stated to Jigen, I think it was, that I will go and get the inner that I want to go and retrieve the vessel. So, we're still at this point here where they don't feel that retrieving the vessel is something that an inner needs to do. But also, another reason for that is that he doesn't know, Jigen doesn't really know which inners he should trust necessarily. So that's why some of the outers are actually the ones involved in getting the vessel back. So that was kind of a cool reveal in terms of how that overall came together. While I remember it, there was a nice callback to one of the other previous arcs, which is when on the train, Mitsuki and Boruto ask Ao about, okay, what nation are you from? What village are you from? And he's like, the Mist. And they're like, oh, we've been there before. We went there on a school trip. And he notes that he hasn't been back to the Mist Village since the end of the war. So he's surprised to hear that it was even a thing that they could go on a trip to the Mist. Now, of course, if you remember the Mist arc, which was, it's in or around the 40s or 50s, I think, in terms of episodes counts of Boruto. It was an anime-only arc, and one that a lot of people at the time felt was this a filler arc before we get to other important content? But they are referencing it all here, that in that arc we learn that, yes, the Mist Village has changed a lot since the end of the war. But there are still people there who sort of want it to be the same mysterious place that it used to be, where a lot of the sort of very kind of creepy aspects of the shinobi world ended up coming from the Mist Village, and that is slowly changing and has changed. So that was a nice scene to just get that reference to it. And it made complete sense that they're meeting someone from the Mist Village for one of the first times since that arc. Of course you would reference it. And it's the same with the Mitsuki scene. Just utilizing what you've done already. That, do you know how you make those anime arcs feel important? Is by doing stuff like this. By referencing them in later episodes. And so it's not just a case where fans are the ones who have to remember everything that happened here, but that the people writing the show also remember it. They deem these moments worthy enough and important enough to reference them again. That's all really good. So, the main thing in terms of, I suppose, growth here that we're getting is that Boruto has gone the complete opposite road on scientific ninja tools. He now sort of dislikes them because of the role they sort of played and Katasuke played in his sort of big low moment at the tuning exams. But over the course of this episode, and as we'll see as the arc progresses, we're going to see Boruto again change his mind on ninja tools. That even the likes of Naruto, Sasuke, Sarada, and everyone, they all view that, they're tools. They're meant to be used in the right position, in the right situation. That there's a specific reason they were banned from the tuning exams, because they're meant to be a test of the individual strength. But in the field, you can use your individual strength plus the tools to augment that. And that's just that understanding that's needed. That Boruto has gone down the path at this point of the only strength that matters is the one you gain yourself. It's ninjutsu. Scientific ninja tools aren't the way to go. So Naruto's sort of happy that okay, so you understand it partly, but you can still use ninja tools in the right situation. So that's what the significance of Naruto using the ninja tool hand was, that even the Hokage is willing to use these tools in the right situation. Even Sasuke is willing to do it also. So, with the setup that they are bringing this ninja tool to another high-tech research lab, that's kind of important because they're going to deliver it and be there around all these other ninja tools. and maybe we'll get Boruto excited again about ninja tools. And as you can see from the preview for next week's episode, that's what it's going to be. We're going to get to meet a new scientist. As you saw again, Sumire is there, which is actually from the manga. Like, this was one of the kind of cool anime things of, like, if you watch the anime, you actually know who Sumire is when she's kind of introduced, quote unquote, here in the manga for the first time. So it'll be interesting to see how they do her here, where the anime is doing Sumire based off the manga, whereas previously Sumire has felt more like an anime only character. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic we're going to get into next week. But yeah, that's the basic setup. Like, we're still in the early days of the arc, but that's why it was so important that this episode did feature the scene where, Kashin Koji reveals the mission to Ao. So for the first time in 16 years, he's going to have real combat. He's going to be the one to get the vessel back, and Kashin Koji has given him a box filled with supplies and also weapons, and it looks like a decently sized box. So, we'll see what sort of ninja tools Kashin Koji has given to Ao, and also just to see how skilled he is. That, he has all this extra information that, okay, his arm, his leg, and like the bit of his head have ninja tools on them. Are they just prosthetics, or is there something more to them? Has he modified them himself necessarily? That's the interesting thing, because we know Katasuke is the one who gave him those prosthetics, and we see the nice little connection moment of him being very grateful to him for doing this for him, and even like adjust his wrist for him. So it doesn't seem like Katasuke is suspicious of the ninja tools, like they've been modified in any way. So I guess we'll have to see if, like, is it like extra attachments or something like that are in the box, that sort of thing. But the scene on the train overall was quite interesting. I suppose the main takeaway mainly being them pointing out to Boruto that ninja tools are more than just, the jutsu canister thing that he was using. It is also prosthetics as well. That science is important in all of this stuff. And like Sarada points out that, like, the video games that you play are also related to this. And Katasuke goes as far as to point out that, like, yes, a lot of the main research and advancements in technology come from ninja tool technology, but it ends up getting passed down to civilian technology. And one of the most important ones in his mind is the prosthetics to help people. Which we, with the Victor arc got a little bit on, and now we're getting kind of more on it, which is, pretty cool to see. In addition to just the fact that the villains, the Kara, are modified in some way. So that's the significance of Amado and why that scene was kind of quite important. So the big thing is that Ao takes the screwdriver that Katasuke is using and basically threatens Boruto with it, and just makes the point of, like, this is a tool. The screwdriver is a tool. It's about how you use the tool. It's not anything about the tool inherently, in that if I killed you with the screwdriver, you'd view it as being this kind of evil weapon that killed someone. But Katasuke was just using it to fix my arm. It's about how you use these things, and that's the exact detail of it. It's a tool, and it is then what you make of it, how you use it. Which, is an important distinction to make for Boruto, who is kind of been back and forth on, like, initially he liked ninja tools, now he doesn't. He's going to have to come to realize, no, these can be useful in the field. In terms of, like, shinobi can grow to, like, know what your typical jutsu moveset is. But if you bring a random ninja tool into the field, it can add something extra to you. And that's what this arc is going to, like, attempt to do kind of going forward. I suppose if there's any final things, I suppose I will talk a little bit about the Jigen and Amado scene. Again, they logically went through a lot of the information that we have from the anime, as well as, the stuff that was covered in the manga, and just like, yeah, this makes sense to cover it this way. That from Jigen's perspective, he's like, yes, it seems like a logical thing to assume that because Victor was trying to steal the vessel, he's the one who crashed the ship. But also that works against itself. That if he was trying to steal the vessel, why would he then crash it? That it seems more like someone else took advantage of the fact that we were all suspicious of Victor and used that to frame him for something bigger. So that's why he suspects that there is someone else at play here. The other thing is that he mentions that he sensed through the karma mark that the vessel moved in some way. And he knows that Victor couldn't have possibly done that, so it was someone else. So that's all really, really interesting. If you're a manga reader, you know what the situation is in this scene. I won't even particularly allude to it, but I liked, getting more scenes with Amado here, and just it shows how trusting the relationship is between Amado and Jigen. And I think we've seen that after only like 2 or 3 scenes between these characters, that if there's anyone on the group that Jigen trusts above all else, it is Amado. And he's having him like make tea for him here. He's discussing like out in the open his thoughts about who the traitor is with him. It's an interesting scene that, like, oh wow, this leader of this incredible group trusts Amado above all else. That's kind of interesting to get. We did get 1 or 2 small Konohamaru and Mugino scenes, just to get across that, Konohamaru finds a data port on the vessel container and puts a flash drive scroll, which I thought was a cool little thing, into it to try and download that data. So they're waiting for that to download, but Mugino gets injured by one of the sort of puppet guards that is also on the ship. Now this happens in the manga as well. They're just focusing on Mugino a little bit more. For anyone wondering, I suppose, I might as well show what Mugino actually looks like in the manga, because he looks completely different. It's really, really funny. There's Mugino in the manga. If you've been watching the anime, like, he doesn't really look that much like him. Like, they have the kind of goggles, glasses, but the rest of the design really doesn't look exactly the same. But he does get the injury here. The more important stuff with Mugino, even from the manga, comes later. And there is the hope that they'll do a little bit more character stuff before any of that stuff happens. But, overall, pretty interesting episode overall. Just, I suppose, at the scene where Naruto gave them the mission, they did talk about, this group is related to your karma mark, and then, of course, Jigen mentions the karma mark later on. And then, from their perspective, they feel that there are Otsutsuki level power characters out there in the shadows that they're not aware of. So they're just keeping the sort of Otsutsuki door open, that they don't know the full scope of what Otsutsukis actually are, in that, okay, we've seen a few of them at this point over the course of the series with, like, Kaguya, Toneri, Momoshiki, Urashiki, and Kinshiki. Like, we've seen a few Otsutsukis at this point, highlighting that it's not just, like, 1 or 2 of them. There's at least, 5, 6, and more, because Kaguya, of course, was preparing for what she felt was like the arrival of a whole group. So there's some interesting stuff going on there with the deeper setup for all of this, which I suppose we'll get into a bit later on. But yeah, the big thing here is that after seeing Ao in the setup arc here, and then in this episode, Boruto seems to like Ao after what he kind of thought him on the train about ninja tools, and just that, Boruto's unique ability to just talk to people and get information out of them and kind of become friends with everyone, but they're now going to be sort of at odds with each other. The big question, though, is how does Boruto and co get into the area where Ao is going to be, where the vessel has crashed? There's a little bit of stuff that still has to happen there, because they have to go to the lab, deliver it, and then go from there. So they're my thoughts on this episode of Boruto. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.